In its simplest form, strategy is not this big, scary thing. It just outlines how we will achieve a client's goals by understanding who their customer is, why they should purchase from our client, and where else they might spend those dollars instead, whether it's a direct competitor or an adjacent market.
Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to Growth Mentors, the podcast where we share snackable growth hacks, strategies, and best practices in how to drive maximum marketing impact and grow your bottom line. I'm your host, Matt LeBlanc, and today we are going to be talking about developing strategies that drive growth. So if you are a brand who is super focused on ROAS or CPA or mostly tactics, and you are finding yourself burning through a lot of ad dollars and you're not sure where the disconnect is happening, this episode might be just the thing that you need. And leading us through it is the agency group director of Jump 450, Caroline Mercurio. How you doing, Caroline?
Good, how are you?
Doing very well. Why don't you just briefly kind of explain to us, what do you do as an agency group director?
Yeah, so in very short terms, I oversee our full agency and all of our client service offerings. So that includes media, creative teams, and all the personnel that rolls up to it.
Excellent. And I know that you're going to be talking about basically how to develop strategies today. You have a very multifaceted, very diverse sort of background in marketing that makes you super uniquely qualified to talk about this. I know that you speak a lot of different creative and media marketing languages. Really has all this experience has really allowed you to sort of like look at these things very holistically. But why don't we jump right into this? Today we're talking about developing strategies that drive growth. Why is this important to talk about?
So when we don't have a cohesive strategy in place, simply put, we're fumbling in the dark. In its simplest form, strategy is not this big, scary thing. It just outlines how we will achieve a client's goals by understanding who their customer is, why they should purchase from our client, and where else they might spend those dollars instead, whether it's a direct competitor or an adjacent market. When we understand these components, we know what messaging is going to be persuasive for customers and where to reach them and the necessary budget to make an impact, as well as how to maintain, a competitive advantage, because we have to always keep an eye on the competition. Essentially, I like to think of it as the intersection of performance, brand, and product marketing, and by extension, all of the platforms that funnel up to them.
So that sounds super reasonable to me. I guess I don't want to jump too far ahead, but can you kind of talk us through, like, what is the alternative? Why would you not come up with that strategy? What would the other route be?
So the other route would be just to focus on the tactics that drive ROAS, that drive CPA, that drive performance, and to really be agnostic about who we're trying to reach and what kind of messaging we're trying to reach them with.
Right.
And letting the algorithms kind of do all the work and just throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it and seeing what sticks. And I won't go so far as to say that can't work, because I have seen it work. But more often than not, even if the performance is good, other problems still arise. Like this usually only really works when a client is extremely direct response and they have large testing budgets and broad appeal. They're not niche. They don't have high brand guidelines. But even in those instances where the performance is good, you still can have problems arise both internally and with the clients when we don't have alignment on a holistic strategy.
So what are some of the common issues that might pop up if you were very tactic focused only?
Yeah, so one of the main ones that I see a lot is misalignment with the client. So they don't understand what we're trying to do or why we're running the tests that we're running. And then we get feedback such as, where's the strategy? I feel like over the course of my career, I've heard that a lot. Just clients asking, what's the strategy? This is something that they very much want, even when they're direct response. And I think it's because it's their marketing dollars on the line, right? It's their neck on the line. Ultimately, as an agency, if a client fails, if we fail a client, usually the worst thing that'll happen is that client leaves. But we have a huge responsibility to our clients not to ever actually have that mindset, because they hire us to help them to succeed. And I think that there's a necessity to show client empathy and recognize that this is their livelihood. When you're on the brand side, this company is your whole job. And if things don't go well there, that can have really, really serious ramifications for you, whether you're an employee or a business owner. So alignment with the client is so important. The client feeling empowered is so important. So I think that's one of the main things is it gives us a framework by which we can ensure that we're speaking the same language and the client feels like they know what's going on.
Absolutely. And I think that another point that you just touched on really quickly there, but might be even more compelling to people, is that if you're tactic focused, it's a good way to sort of burn through ad dollars quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, when we're doing a lot of testing, which I'm in favor of a lot of testing, that's something that has always been in Jump's DNA. But when we're doing a lot of testing without a strategy underpinning it, there can be a lot of misses, right? And it can take a while to really find the right path forward. And essentially what you're doing when you find the right path forward is you're identifying a strategy. You're just coming at it from a testing methodology instead of from a research methodology, essentially.
Definitely. So I think that just to sort of kind of move us into the meat here a little bit, we're going to talk through some of the benefits of having a strategy. Yeah, beginning with alignment between the client and the team.
Yeah, sounds great. So some of the benefits that I see, alignment, as I mentioned. So a strong marketing strategy will give us one central vision, right? And it serves as the foundation on which we consider what tactics will be most effective. So we start with strategy and then we devise the tactics. So it gives us that alignment. It gives us that chance to speak the same language. But there are other benefits as well. It's not just about client relations and politics. It's also about driving purposeful action. So the strategy helps us understand our customers, our markets, our product market fit, the products themselves, and the unique value props for those products. Essentially, why should a customer buy this product instead of any of the other solutions that they could spend their money on? So, for example, if a client is in the meal delivery space, right, the direct competitors would be any other meal delivery kit that's similar, that's in the same geographic area, etc. But that's not the only other place that a customer could spend their dollars for the same end result, right? We also have to consider groceries. We have to consider restaurants. Yep. We have to consider all of these adjacent markets because ultimately people are spending dollars to feed themselves. So anywhere that someone is spending dollars to feed themselves, we need to be considering in terms of our key messaging and our unique value props. Why should the customer spend their dollars with us? We can break down each of these components then and kind of figure out the messaging, the platforms, the tactics, what is going to be needed to motivate customers and direct them down the funnel. And then the third thing is it gives us, I've said the word framework a lot, but it provides a framework to hold the tactics. So rather than just a series of tactics, we now know what we're going to test and why. Not necessarily when, because digital marketing is very nimble. We have to pivot. Sometimes things take longer to test. Sometimes they're faster, but we roughly know what it is that we're trying to figure out and what we think will be most persuasive. So they become part of this cohesive approach to success rather than those tactics standing on their own. And this is also important because you do have multiple people working on an account. You know, if you're a shop of one, you're running everything, you're determining the creative, you're determining the media, you're managing the budgets, you're an agency of one, maybe it's a little less important. But when you have creative directors and strategy directors and growth directors and all of these acquisition managers, buyers, report, everything. You have so many people working on an account plus everyone on the brand side. Without a strategy in play, they just might not be aligned on how to achieve that common goal, who to reach, how or where to reach them, what messaging to leverage. And that all leads to a lot of duplication of efforts and misunderstandings and just frustration all around.
Yeah, I feel like you said that really clearly. It's a framework to hold the tactics, right? It's so many people that work on accounts. It's so many cats to sort of keep together, right? And so, you know, the way that you're explaining it, I just sort of think of the strategy as kind of that through line or that story that kind of runs through all the tactics to sort of keep everybody on the same page. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's really just about knowing what you're trying to get and how we're going to try to get there. It's mostly about understanding the client.
Yeah. So I feel like we actually are speaking kind of a high level here. I want to break it down just to get a little bit more clarity and simplicity in here. What is the difference between a marketing strategy and a marketing plan?
Yeah. So a marketing strategy is going to be very big picture, and it's going to outline the brand positioning, the key audiences. It's going to identify the customer problem statement, which is essentially the customer's why, right? Like I am looking for, going back to the meal kit example, right? I want an easy way to feed myself. I'm so busy, but everything is too expensive, or, I don't have time to meal prep. I don't have whatever it is. What are their pain points? Time, price sensitivity, usually things like that, right? Or health, it doesn't fit my dietary needs. So you identify the problem statement. What is the problem that the customer is trying to solve? And that would lead them to your product. It keeps goals and forecasts at the center. So, what are your budgets? What are you going to spend on each channel? All of these things can and should be revisited as necessary, but it keeps them at the center. And it considers the competition and the full field of competition. A marketing plan, on the other hand, that's going to be very step by step. Those are going to be the tactics, the details. It's essentially what brings the strategy to life. The plan is going to be what you're doing to bring the strategy to life, right? And it's going to be very specific and focused on specific tools, specific platforms, specific levers that we can pull within the different platforms, that kind of thing. So it's very executional.
Right. I see. So marketing strategy being, this is the customer's pain point. This is maybe the type of messaging or angles that we should go after. Marketing plan, these are the placements where we should really be running these creatives.
Right. We're going to launch these tests with this messaging at this time on these platforms. That's going to be a plan. We're going to test new landing pages. That's going to fall into the plan, things like that.
I see. So let's talk through some different types of marketing strategies.
So the Ansoff matrix divides a product strategy into four basic types. So you've got, or marketing strategy into four basic types. So you've got product development, market penetration, and diversification. So product development is essentially a new product in an existing market. So the development, or if you're an agency, most likely the promotion of a new product in an existing market. And this requires innovation and market research. You need to identify the audience needs and figure out your profiling. And an example here would be I'm going to try to pronounce this right, the Uni-Kurutoga mechanical pencil, which was like this revolutionary, quote unquote, mechanical pencil. The mechanical pencil market was full. I mean, it's a mechanical pencil, right? But they basically had a lot of unique value props. It was being hailed by all of these like very techie people as being like the new gold standard. It stayed sharp and things like that. So it was essentially a new version of the mechanical pencil going into an existing market, the existing mechanical pencil market, right? So that was product development. Market development takes an existing product into new markets. So a familiar product, something people already are aware of, but bringing it into an unfamiliar marketplace, like a new geographic. So when we are going into a new geo, it's very easy, I think, sometimes to just assume that what's been working previously will continue to work. But a new geo could require new pricing. It could require new promotional efforts. It could require new key messaging, because what's going to be persuasive is going to be different. So an example for that might be Microsoft's HoloLens AR headset, when they expanded into a couple dozen new markets in the European Union in 2017. They were already established, but they were expanding into the EU. What are people willing to pay for an AR headset in the EU? I mean, a pretty girly example would be looking at the difference in prices between like getting eyelash extensions in America versus the UK. I can tell you very clearly it's a very, very different price point in the UK. They will not pay what we're paying here. So you have to consider things like that.
Can I ask you, you're talking about geographic examples. I'm wondering, could this also be like if you were going to use the same product, like you just used the example of eyelashes? What if I sold eyelashes, but then I was going to specialize them somehow for like different events, like a quinceañera or a prom, or, market them something like that? Does that sort of like concept change sort of apply here as well?
Yeah. So I would say yes, it does. So another example might be a media company, right? And you're doing one kind of media and you have a strategy in play for that that involves. So I have a client, they have a two-pronged strategy. One is around evergreen kind of creative content, so that they're distributing, and the other is more up to the moment, breaking news type stuff, right? With political, with the election coming up, right? As we launch into political commentary, that's actually kind of a new market. Even though it's still people who are consuming media, I'm still instructing my team to think about this a little bit differently because the people who consume political media might be very different than the people who are consuming the other kinds of media that we've been putting out there.
Sure.
It's going to all be up to the minute. It's not going to be evergreen. It's going to be breaking news. So that already changes the strategy. But also, who's seeking this out and why are they seeking this out? Has the problem statement changed? Before, the problem statement might be for generic media, like, I want to stay up to the minute on XYZ things that I'm interested in, and I want engaging content, or I want to follow a certain writer, right? I want to follow this one writer. Political commentary could very well be, I want really persuasive articles to change my Uncle Bob's feelings about something, even though we know it probably won't work. They're going to be looking for things that are sharing, and clickbait is probably going to take off. It just changes everything when you change the market, even slightly. So marketing penetration is selling existing products to existing markets. So far we've had product development, new product, existing market. Market development, existing product, new market. Now you've got market penetration, existing product, existing market. This is the least risky strategy, and it typically works best if the market is either growing or if we alter the promotional efforts within the existing marketing channels. Because, I mean, essentially, it's one of those things where it's very easy to do nothing. It's very easy for the inclination to just be, we're just going to keep the status quo rolling and try to push through it. But if the market is contracting, or at the very least not growing, nothing's likely to change if nothing changes, right? So a good example of this would be McDonald's I'm Lovin' It campaign when it came out, right? Like, their stock was down, sales were down, McDonald's wasn't doing great, and then they launched the most successful ad campaigns of the odds with this catchy jingle by Justin Timberlake, right? And it was so long running, and it actually had huge impact on McDonald's performance and sales. So they essentially, existing product, existing market, McDonald's already existed. It already had a customer base, but they altered the promotional efforts. They took a big swing. And then finally is the diversification strategy, which is new markets and new products. And this is the scariest, riskiest, most likely to fail of all the strategies, but it can also have the highest upside potential because it's so risky. So an example here would be Samsung, which began as a trading company, but later expanded into insurance, securities, and retail, and now has a huge, huge presence in software. So those are the four types of strategies under the Ansoff matrix.
Gotcha. What are the 3 C's and 4 P's?
So I see you've been reading my my decks. These are really just the most basic things that you need to identify and really grasp in order to start to lay out your strategies. So the 3 C's are the company, the customer, and the competition. And that's pretty self-explanatory. Know your business, know who their customers are likely to be, both the most niche, high-value audiences and also the total addressable market, the expansion audiences. Know who your competitors are. Where are they advertising? What are their unique value props, right? What makes them persuasive? What is their key messaging? And then the 4 Ps are product, price, promotion, and place. And this is where we start to diverge into product marketing. It's a place where I think a lot of performance marketers are very uncomfortable, but this is like, where do we fit in the larger competitive set? What makes us special? Are we priced advantageously? Is the market already saturated? Where are we delivering our products? Where would customers find us or find out about us? And I read an example once in a book, and I wish I'm blanking on the name of it right now, so I apologize for not giving attribution, but it's not my example, about a cake pop versus a cake. These are products that are made ostensibly from the same basic ingredients. To a baker, they might seem like very similar products, similar flavor, similar recipe, but ultimately a cake pop is going to be a very different product. It's going to be sold in different places than a cake. It's going to be sold in coffee shops, for example, as opposed to bakeries. Not to say that there can't be crossover, but typically. Cake pops are portable. Cake pops are single serve. They are cheaper. They are more frequently purchased. They're not a special occasion treat the same way. I could go on, but product marketing could be for another podcast. But the point is, you have to consider the product market fit in order to develop a performance and or brand marketing strategy.
Right. You're really singing the praises of cake pops there. Just like, gun to your head. Is it slice of cake or cake pop? Because I'm going slice of cake like every day.
Oh, I would go for slice of cake, but as a mom, I have to say I buy a lot more cake pops.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm not going to buy a whole 8-inch cake for a random Friday morning, but if I take my kid to the coffee shop, she's asking for a cake pop.
You know what? That's a marketing angle right there. It's great for moms, right? It's don't waste a giant cake on your finicky kids. Buy a couple cake pops. How about giving us some actionable steps for building a comprehensive marketing strategy?
Yeah, get out the pencils because there's a few steps here. I guess the first is get the client's perspective, get their point of view. They started the company. And I mean, if you are the company, you can skip this part. But if you're an agency, get the client's buy-in, find out who they think their competitors are, how they see their product. And sometimes the way that they see the product might diverge from what the data is showing us, but it's a starting place for us to have that conversation. Find out what their goals are. That's going to be central. That's so key. Don't assume we know what their goals are. I've had some clients, we might assume, for example, that the goal is growth. The client wants to sell more, but if they don't have a infrastructure to support more growth, that may not be the goal. The goal may be efficiency. And that might mean that if we're being really efficient, we need to pull back budgets, which no agency wants to hear probably, but like that might be the goal. So find out what their goals are. Identify their pain points. What are the pain points that you're currently experiencing as a company? So is it technological integration? Is it attribution analytics? Is it velocity of testing? Is it not really knowing what your brand voice should be, what your key messages should be? Is it lack of differentiation in the market? Is your product is your unique value prop not very strong? And maybe we need to have a larger conversation around that. I asked a client once, why should someone purchase your product instead of one of their competitors? It was a very saturated market. And that client actually told me, there's no reason. Like, is it more value based? Is it, you have a wider selection? Really try to dig. And they were like, no. So, I mean, it's gonna be hard in a competitive market to get good performance if you don't have anything that makes you special. So, if you're a company, please address that. If you're an agency and you're seeing that with a client, it can be a little more difficult, but it's still worth trying to find an angle. So, what are the pain points? Who are the competitors? And gather any data you can from them, from past performance, etc. So step 2 is research. And this is probably the most time-consuming step. So there's something I like called a SWOT analysis, SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's kind of like a little table. A competitor analysis, a UX audit. I always like to go through the client's, UX, see how things are set up, how many touch points are there to check out, is it streamlined, do they have autofill? Is the website, is the key value props above the fold? Do they have the pixels installed on every page and every stage of checkout? Those kinds of things. So UX audit. I love to use SEMrush. I'm a big fan of that tool for doing some like audience analysis, competitor audience analysis. Where are our competitors advertising? What are our audience demographics? Things like that. What percentage of our competitors' spend is going to which platforms? Which platforms are our key audiences most active on? SEMrush has all that data. Platform past performance is also really important. Were there any big seasonal spikes at any point? Things like that. Just in general, how has the account been performing? So researching and getting to really become intimately familiar with the product and the customer and the competition.
Yes, and there are always seasonal spikes. That is very overlooked.
Yeah,
Time of week, holidays, time of year, all of that stuff, I feel like gets overlooked a lot, but makes a really impactful difference.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you need to be leveraging them in your strategy, right? If we know performance is going to be good during a certain holiday period, for example, how are we going to increase the tailwinds once that ends? Because so often you'll see that people will just be like, and things are great, and then it falls off a cliff. And to an extent, that's to be expected because people are spending less. After they spend a lot, they're likely to not spend as much immediately after. They're also less likely to spend immediately preceding it because they're bookmarking. I love that, the bookmarking behavior where it's like, well, I know Memorial Day is coming up, so I'm just going to bookmark this and then see if it goes on sale in 3 weeks or 1 week or 2 weeks. So we have to consider that when we're doing forecasting. And we have to use those periods of time wisely, too, to figure out and develop evergreen strategies. And from what is working, even within the sale messaging, like look at, or the seasonal messaging, look at like, well, what are some of these components that we can pull out that might be evergreen and start to test them, see if that will continue to work. Because we usually have higher volume when things are going well, so we can use it as a testing ground. Step 3 is to set SMART goals. Step 4 is to determine your unique value prop and your problem statement.
Sorry, when you say SMART goals, though, this may be a dumb question. Is that an acronym?
It is. Sorry, I'm moving too fast. So SMART goals stand for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So specific, really well-defined and clear. Measurable, specific criteria to measure progress. Achievable, i.e. realistic. Relevant, so it aligns with the values and the long-term goals. And time-bound, so clearly defined timeline and basically like a due date, starting and an ending date. So you set your SMART goals or your KPIs, but even if you have the KPIs, you should probably break it down and think about what is it going to take to reach those KPIs and set those mini goals as well. You determine your unique value prop and your problem statements, which I've talked about at length. And then once you have all of that lined out, you can craft your key brand messaging and determine the audiences. So I always like to start with your total addressable market, then like a middle audience, and then what I call the lead domino audience, which is your most niche, most valuable audiences. Then you can select your marketing channels and your tactics, establish your forecasts, budgets, and timeline. And then the last step is actually not part of the first step. So that's kind of how you put together the first strategy. You consolidate all that information and package it up all pretty. And then the last step is the ongoing step, which is measure, report, and pivot, because we don't set a strategy and then just leave it. Depending on the budget and the goals, you might need to revisit the strategy monthly. You might need to revisit the strategy yearly. But you need to kind of figure out what that timeline looks like. And even once you have determined what that timeline looks like, stay open-minded that even that could change. If things aren't working, for example, don't wait until the year's up. Go back to the drawing board.
Excellent. So, Caroline, I would love to land us at a little bit of a case study or an anecdote, maybe a time when we've implemented a strategy with the client, what the situation was, and then, what the strategy was that we brought to the table.
Yeah, definitely. So we had one client that was in the luxury apparel space, which is a pretty saturated market, of course. We began a strategy exercise when we were onboarding them. We went through all the steps and filled out, I have a roadmap document that I like to fill out that kind of guides me through all the steps I outlined. I filled everything out. I looked at the competition and what I found was a few things. One, they had several great value propositions. They weren't completely unique, but they definitely differentiated them in this very saturated market. They were luxurious, but they were also sustainable, cruelty-free. Their fibers were traceable. They were family-owned and operated. They had a great origin story. So there was a lot we could kind of play with. I identified that their target audience were high household income women with an interest in fashion, minimalism, and establishing a capsule wardrobe. The style was very timeless. With a secondary audience of high household income men and women, especially for like gifting. We were going into the holiday season, higher education, based on details that we saw in like SEMrush around demographic data, luxury and competitor brand interests and keywords, and sustainability and household income. So people who are searching for like a lot of their competitors, things like that. There were kind of two different approaches here. And this is one of those examples I said where what the data is showing you isn't necessarily what the client is showing you or telling you. So the client really wanted us to, I'm going to use the phrase punch up. They wanted us to go after the really high level competition. They wanted us to position ourselves against them as the same level of luxury without the compromise of the really high price point. I mean, we're still talking about articles of clothing here that are in the $300 to $500 range, but some of the competitors are in the $800, $900, $1,000 kind of range. So they wanted us to punch up and kind of say like, hey, you can have this luxury fiber, this luxury apparel that's just as good as them, but you're not paying the markup because we are traceable. That said, those competitors that were up here, they really weren't worried about us. I hate to say it. They weren't worried about us at that point in time. So what I was finding was that there was a competitor who was, I don't want to use the word below us, but a little bit of a lower price point, more accessible, lower quality in theory. And they were, in what we were seeing in the data, our biggest market threat. They were bidding super aggressively against our brand terms. They had a very similar story around sustainability and traceability. So like the unique value props were matching up almost 1-to-1. They claimed to have fibers from the same, region, the same animals, et cetera. So very, very similar in terms of how they were relating their quality, whether or not that quality was actually the same.
Sure.
They had great PR. I was seeing them all over, with a lot of content, a lot of SEO, really great PR, being featured in being featured online. And when I first brought them up to the client, they were like, "Oh, we're not worried about them. They're not as good as us." And they're cheaper. So people who are looking for this level of quality, they're not going to go for the cheap stuff. But then I pointed out that this competitor had just actually released a new luxury line, which was extremely comparable, very similar price points. So now we've got a competitor who has the same UVPs and the same price point for the same product, and is bidding really aggressively on our brand terms and has better SEO than us and better brand awareness than us. Definitely, in my opinion, our biggest market threat. But the client was really, really focused on punching up.
Aspirational. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So my job was to figure out a strategy for us to get this alignment. And this is an example too of why that alignment's so important, because me as a client lead, I'm going to focus on where I think is going to make the most impact.
Right.
But that's not necessarily what that client wanted. So having this conversation gave us a chance to get ahead of that. And what I ultimately decided to do for them was to take the budget and to play defense and offense. So for defense, we were going after the lower price point market with key messages on quality difference, greater durability, luxury, et cetera. We were making sure that on Google search that we were staying on top of NADAM's keywords and that we were bidding enough on our brand terms that NADAM wasn't overtaking us, things like that. So for the lower price point market, we were going to be making sure that this other company wasn't, hitting us with their brand keywords. We were bidding enough to basically play defense on our own brand, and that we were also kind of starting to go after their keywords with a certain percentage of the budget. And really for that lower price point market, we were focusing on quality difference, greater durability, luxury. They're basically trying to come in and say that they're as good as us, and we were coming back and saying, no, we have the quality. Like, this is the difference between any, but I've been saying the fiber type, but it probably doesn't matter to say like any Mongolian cashmere versus our Mongolian cashmere, right? Like ours is from very, very specific parts of Mongolia, things like that. Quality difference, greater durability, luxury. But at the same time, we're going to go after the reach market. So
this is the offense.
For the offense, we're going to go after the reach market. That's the higher price point, the higher household income markets, the Henrys, which is another acronym for high earner, not rich yet, the Henrys. So for them, we were going after them the way that other guy was coming after us in our market. So high brand identity, luxury, going after the non-specialized brands too, which, all of the the designers, right, who might have cashmere, even if it's not their main product, like Ralph Lauren or Brooks Brothers, things like that. Not direct competitors, but like I said, adjacent markets. And we were coming at them with key messages of better quality for less and luxury and value without compromises. And we were really working to reverse engineer that competition. So our overall approach was two-pronged. And for both, we were going to leverage rapid creative and audience testing, as well as considering alternative channels and media like content and CTV for holiday specifically, just based on where our competitors were having a presence. So that was kind of the way that came about. And like I said, it gave us that alignment. It gave us that path forward. So we knew like what we're designing our tests around, where it needs to funnel in. And we ended up actually massively growing that company. They multiple times they sold out and the inventory actually couldn't keep up with the demand.
Wow. So thank you so much, Caroline, for talking us through this. This has been Caroline Mercurio, the agency group director at Jump 450. If you are listening and you are interested in exploding your own digital growth, you can get in touch with Jump 450 in the link below in the description. That is www.jump450.com. And don't forget to subscribe for more weekly episodes. We'll see you next time.